Good evening, everybody. You're watching America First. My name is Nicholas J. Fuentes. We got a great show for you tonight. Very excited to be back here with you tonight on Wednesday. We have a lot to talk about tonight. Lots to get into. A big show. Not good news. Very sad, tragic news. Our featured story, as you know, we're going to be talking all about the Catholic Church school shooting in Minneapolis, which took place today. And it's a horrible situation. Horrible, horrible, unthinkable tragedy. And we'll talk all about it tonight. And we're going to focus on two specific things about it, which is, of course, it goes without saying, the perpetrator. Why did these things happen? What happened here? Why does a person go, in this instance, and shoot up a Catholic church filled with children and the elderly? We'll talk about the perpetrator. Obviously, that's important, and their motive. And we're also going to talk tonight a little bit about the reaction. I have to say, I'm honestly disgusted by this circus over the shooting. And I promise you, I'm not virtue signaling. I'm not saying that so you think I'm a good person. But you see these news reports this afternoon, major shooting, 20 people injured, 2 people dead. And within seconds, you're just getting political slop about it from both sides. And the motivation of this shooter is actually inaccessible, I think, to a lot of older people. Much has been said about the words that were written on the firearms, and the guy's clearly a transsexual. At the same time, he's also got political messages on the guns, which apparently contradict that. And there's a very good explanation for the motivation. It seems like it has a lot to do with a niche internet subculture, which involves the occult, it involves Satanism, it involves white supremacy. It's international, clearly transnational element. It runs through Russia, through Europe, through the Middle East, the United States. We'll talk a little bit about that. The boomers just do not comprehend what this is. They just can't. They're not online enough. I think most normies have never heard of what this is. They don't have the tools to understand what this is. But it doesn't stop everybody from weighing in. It doesn't stop everybody from weighing in. And immediately it turns into a partisan debate, ideological debate. And if you'll forgive me, if you'll excuse me, a debate about transgenderism. I don't believe it has anything to do with any of these things, actually. And I'm disappointed at the quality of content we're getting. Everybody racing to Twitter and just the dumbest shit imaginable. The dumbest, most retarded shit imaginable. You have some people saying it's Israel. What the fuck does Israel have to do with this? And that's coming from me. Hello? And I'm the expert. And I can tell you how Israel's involved in a lot of things, but you got a dozen or so people saying it's Israel. It's a false flag for Israel. How does that even make sense? You got another camp saying it's the government and the CIA. Now it's plausible there might be a connection, but people are saying it's MK Ultra, mind control. Okay, you lost me. Then you have your normal conservatives saying, if you make people transgender, they're going to commit mass shootings. Do we even understand why transgenderism is wrong? I don't think anything is inherent in transgender ideology that says kill children. And that's not a defense of transgenderism. I can already see the clips. You know, I'm defending transgenders. I'm not. But I don't think there's anything intrinsic in that has transgender people idolizing the Columbine shooters and murdering children. I don't think it has anything to do with that, actually. What this is, and, you know, people are so confused these days. Everything's ideological. Everything's partisan. Everything is about the fucking election. It's about Trump. This has nothing to do with Trump. This has nothing to do with Republicans and Democrats, conservatives and liberals. What this is evil. This is the face of pure evil. That's what that is. And the more that you look at this case, the more that you look at the evidence, if you understand where this came from, the internet subculture that it came from, you understand this is non-ideological evil. It is nonpartisan, non-ideological, I promise you. This is not a culture warrior. This is pure evil. And maybe that goes without saying, but it should be said. Somebody whose thoughts and writings are filled with idolization of mass killers of every stripe, every culture, every ideology, that has nothing to do with American politics. That is spiritual. That is in the domain of the spiritual. The killer has drawings in his notebook of himself looking in the mirror and seeing the devil reflected back to him. That's not ideological, that's evil. Now, insofar as evil has symptoms, such as what we would understand as mental illness. If someone is taken over by evil, it looks like mental illness. Transgenderism has a very high coincidence with personality disorders and mental illness. That is a symptom of evil. It is a symptom. It is in that territory of evil. But that's what this is at the bottom of it. And, you know, we talk a lot on this show about all these things. We talk about the right and the left. We talk about voting in the elections, and we talk about Jews and Christians. We talk about a lot of these things, but this is at the core. This is, and I'm rarely talk about things with this lens, but if there ever was an occasion to talk about those powers and principalities that we're fighting against in a spiritual realm, this is it. This is one of those very clear-cut examples in the realm of serial killers, in the realm of mass murderers. It's in the domain of that. It is in, let's not make a category error. It is in the domain of the spiritual. This is about good and evil. Somebody identifies with the devil and fantasizes about murdering children for no reason other than sadism. That's just evil. Without a facade, without a patina, without any costume. That's pure distilled, 99% pure, 100% pure evil. So, and maybe that goes without saying, but it bears repeating because I see and honestly, I really blame a lot of the conservatives on this. Why is everybody looking for somebody to blame? This is a horrible tragedy. The person that perpetrated the attack is clearly a maniac. If you are not a spiritual person, you might say this is just pure mental illness. If you are, you'd say it's pure evil. Why is everybody looking for someone to blame? You know, the Democrats, they used to blame the guns, the white supremacy, the white males. On the right, everybody's racing to blame transgenders, the Democrats, the mainstream media. It goes without saying, or it should, that there are evil people in the world. And they come in all shapes and sizes, and all different colors, and all different creeds. There are people that are deeply fucked up, mentally ill, evil, possessed, demonically influenced, whatever you prefer. But we know these people are with us, and they engage in other behaviors that are dissonant. They engage in other behaviors that are disordered. Many of them are porn addicts. Many of them are transsexuals. Many of them are killing animals. Many of them are abusing drugs or alcohol. Many of them are sexually abusive. I mean, these are behaviors that coincide, are symptomatic of, are actually causal, drawing a person further into evil. And then this is the ultimate evil. Child sacrifice, murder of children, sadistic, lethal violence. And anyway, so conservatives need to just stop. It's I like lose my mind when I see this stuff. I thought this is like Matt Walsh's. This is Matt Walsh's Super Bowl. A tranny committed a shooting. Oh boy, what is a woman? What is a woman, brother? Anyway, so we'll talk all about that. If we have time, we're going to talk about another story. I don't know if we'll get to it. You never know these days. I tend to go on and on. I'm rambling on these days. But our second story tonight, we're going to talk about a letter that was sent to Wikipedia by the House of Representatives. They're saying that Wikipedia is biased. Oh, finally. Wikipedia is very biased. If you look at their profile on me or any conservative ever for that matter, it is effectively an encyclopedia of hit pieces. But take a wild guess. I get tired of it. I get tired of it. I myself, and it's my brand, it's my thing. Take a wild guess. You want to know what the House Republicans' complaint about Wikipedia is? Take a stab in the dark with no contextual information. What do you think their complaint is about Wikipedia and their editorial bias? You guessed it. The Republicans say that Wikipedia is too pro-Palestine. Its articles about Israel and the Jews are anti-Semitic. I feel like Rachel Maddow on the night of the election. Do you remember in 2016 when she said, nope, this isn't a terrible, terrible dream. No, this isn't a nightmare. This is us. This is our country. This is reality now. That's how I feel. I feel like her in 2016 and 2025. Every day you wake up, FEMA resources, can't have them, boycotted Israel. Harvard, no research grants. Why? Criticized Israel. Mass deportations for anyone that shit on Israel on Twitter. We're going after Wikipedia. Oh, finally some good news because they're anti-Semitic. Okay. I just get really tired of all of it. But anyway, if we have time, we'll talk about that as well. Otherwise, we'll save it for tomorrow. Before we get into all the news, I want to remind you to smash the follow button on Rumble, smash the like button, leave a comment, let me know what you think. I'm not going to be here Friday for the, what is it, Labor Day? Labor Day weekend. I'm not going to be here Friday, no show. I'm going to take a little time off. I'm tired. It's been a long year, but the generational run is going to pick up again in the middle of September. I got some big collaborations. You're going to love them. You're going to really like them. I got 3 or 4 big collaborations in the works in September. So I'm starting a little bit later these days. I'm only taking a little reprieve, birthday reprieve, Labor Day reprieve before the generational run goes into overdrive. This is generational run overdrive, turbo, nitrous. So anyway. Won't be here Friday. Remember to get your hats. Is this tasteless? It's a show about a mass killing, but Fuentes.store, camo, black, blue, made in America, free shipping. Go to AmericaFirst.plus to get your subscriptions. $15 a month to get access to the whole archive, as well as talk to me in a group chat. $100 a month club, you get to hang out with me. And we get to have a lot of fun. We get to talk to everybody. Hundreds of people in there. Everyone's having a great time. I step in there. Everybody trolls me. I get really pissed off. It's a lot of fun for everybody. Okay, but we're going to move on. We're going to dive into the show, and we're going to tackle this mass shooting head on because I have really so much to say about it. And so I guess we'll first talk about what exactly took place. We'll get into some of the details. So this happened at a Catholic school in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And children just came back, returning to school from summer vacation, and they were in church. They were in the church part of the Catholic school when the 23-year-old transgender male gunman, gun they, them, gun person, shouldn't joke about it, but it's so absurd. 23-year-old gunman opened fire on the church from outside, shooting through the windows, heavily armed with semi-automatic rifles, shotguns, pistols. About 20 people were injured, many of them shot. We don't have an exact count of how many people were actually hit with bullets, but about 20 people were injured, many of them children, some of them over the age of 80. These are grade school age children, elderly adults, some staff, some school personnel. And then the gunman turned the gun on himself and committed suicide. Shooting lasted for about 2 minutes, 2 fatalities, an 8-year-old and a 10-year-old. Just the worst thing imaginable. You have to say, though, it could have been so much worse. For the parents of those children, it doesn't make a lick of a difference. But when everybody saw that story, I think everybody assumed the worst. This is a gunman with some serious firepower, opening fire on a defenseless group of people. They said 20 casualties. I assume 30 people died. I assume this is on the scale of a Sandy Hook. And again, doesn't make it less of a tragedy. It's still terrible. But you have to thank God that it could have been so much worse. And the people that were actually there say that if it wasn't for the pews, it would have been far worse. The pews actually acted as cover. People got to the ground, and thank God for the personnel bravely that ordered everybody to the ground, got them under cover. And so it doesn't seem to be as bad as it could have been. Not to say it isn't tragic, obviously, but could have been so much worse. As I said, the gunman killed himself, and very quickly we started to learn more about the gunman. And within hours, within minutes, we found the gunman's YouTube channel and some other social media profiles. We find out he's 23 years old, and his connection to the site of the killing is that his mother is apparently a devout Catholic and worked at the school. He attended the school. So that was his connection. He went back to his grade school where his mom works and shot it up. Not atypical in these kinds of situations. They usually go back to their old school, or, you know, if the parents are involved in the community. So he had went to that school. He underwent what seems to be a gender transition around the age of 17. That's why that is when he lawfully applied for a legal name change. He was born Robert Westman at age 17 in 2019. He changed the name to a Robin Westman. Name change was signed off by the mother. A lot of people are criticizing the mother, saying, how could a Catholic woman sign off on this? Obviously, it's immoral, but you don't know what's going on there. I think we should really be charitable to this person. Her son, maniac, just killed a bunch of people. But it is worth saying the mother did sign off on this. He's a transgender male. And they found on his YouTube channel a number of disturbing videos, including a video of a notebook where he wrote a diary, hundreds of pages long. And what was interesting about the diary, it contains a lot of writing, some drawings. It's written in the Cyrillic alphabet. Cyrillic meaning the alphabet that they use in Russian, for example. And apparently he was a Russian speaker, practiced his Russian, learned Russian. So he wrote the notebook in a code, and I suppose there's a transliteration with the Cyrillic alphabet. And so the entire thing was written, which is very bizarre. It's a bizarre detail that I don't see a lot of people talking about. He wrote it in the Russian script, in the Cyrillic script. In addition to that, he filmed a video showing off his weapons. And he had a number of rifles, handguns, shotguns, and they were drawn on with a white marker. He wrote the names of other mass killers. He wrote memes, emoticons, political slogans, many of them contradictory, many of them right-wing. He wrote release the files, a reference to Epstein. He wrote kill Trump. He wrote about destroying Israel, destroying India, as well as a number of internet memes, references to other mass shootings. He wrote screw your optics. And this is a nod to the Christchurch massacre. If you're familiar with any of this stuff, the Christchurch massacre in New Zealand, the killer shot up a mosque, and very similarly, he wrote all over his guns in white marker, ironic internet memes, slogans, things like that. So it's clearly a nod to all these other killers. And the person appears to be deranged. In the video, he's talking to himself, breathing heavily. You know, you can just sort of tell somebody's not right. This person was clearly mentally ill. We don't know too much biographical information. We know there's clearly a male to female sex change. He grew his hair out long and wore it in pigtails, painted his nails, spoke in a feminine voice, changed his name legally. We know that the mother was Catholic, involved in the school. We don't know too much else. We don't know who he talked to, if he had a friend group. We don't know if there were other social profiles. Some rumors are that he had a Twitter account and a profile on a forum associated with mass killings, but that's not proven yet. We don't know if he was on Telegram, if he was influenced by anybody. All of that, I'm sure, will be forthcoming in the days and weeks, if it comes out at all. We don't know about the family situation, about the father. In a word, we don't know the whole story. But we do have some of these artifacts that tell us some things. Before we break it down, though, I want to read this report. This is from the New York Times, just to give you all the details. It says, quote, investigators were examining writings and YouTube videos left behind by a heavily armed assailant who shot through the window of a Catholic church in Minneapolis on Wednesday, killing an 8-year-old and a 10-year-old and injuring 17 others. The suspect's social media accounts contain videos of diary entries that describe the killing of children and a drawing of the sanctuary of the Annunciation Catholic Church where the shooting took place during Mass at about 8:30 a.m. The videos also show weapons, bullets, and what appear to be explosive devices. The Minneapolis police chief, Brian O'Hara, said the attacker, who was carrying a rifle, a shotgun, and a pistol, died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound. He identified the assailant as Robin Westman, age 23. Of the 17 people injured, 14 were children ranging in age from 6 to 15. The 3 adults were parishioners in their 80s. All are expected to survive, thank God. Investigators believe the attacker was a former student at the school, and the suspect's mother is a retired school employee. The guns used in the attack had been lawfully purchased. In seemingly stream-of-consciousness videos that the gunman posted, he fixated on guns, violence, and school shooters. He displayed his own cache of weapons, bullets, explosive devices, scrawled with anti-Semitic, racist language, and threats against President Trump. The videos also show pages from a diary with long entries describing self-hatred, violence against children, and a desire to inflict harm on himself. The entries are almost entirely written in English, but using Cyrillic letters. A sticker in the diary displays LGBTQ and transgender flags with a gun and the slogan, Defend Equality.
Just want to interject very quickly. Have y'all heard people say that World War III is going to be a spiritual war? I've been hearing that a lot. And it seems that all the chaos that's going on throughout the world, the only thing that will provide a solution to that is us realizing that we're all godly beings, that we're all connected under God. When we look around and see what's happening between Israel and Palestine, Ukraine and Russia, and there's a lot of other atrocities happening throughout the world, it is the most ungodly thing. And when Nick talks about it's evil, it is evil. But how do we try to solve it? We try to solve it with politics. We try to solve it with ideologies. We have the Democrats that can't wait to go out here and say, see, it's a problem with guns. It's a problem with guns. We got the Republicans that can't wait to go out here and say, hey, look at it. It's a transgender. That's why these transgenders are ruining everything. Our souls are sick. It may play out in those areas to where, like Nick said, where the ailments, you can say, become a mental health thing. But our souls are sick. Our souls are sick and it's spreading like cancer. Then it's carried out in a mental health crisis. We cannot solve this politically. It has to be solved with us reconnecting with God. When we understand that we're all God's children, we understand that we are in this all together rather than everything being divided, everything being separated. When everything's divided and separated, then we look at things where we start to use this situation to push our agendas rather than using this situation to wake up and realize that we have to get closer to each other. And the only way that we'll connect with each other is us understanding that we're all connected under this umbrella of God. Just my opinion.
Now, again, I said this at the top of the show, and maybe this is confusing, but I'll explain it thoroughly here. If you are familiar with some of the mass shootings that have occurred recently, this has all the hallmarks of a niche internet subculture that's on obscure forums, on Telegram, and it is effectively a group of what you would call accelerationists. And accelerationism can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people in many different contexts. You have the effective accelerationists like Mark Andreessen. These are technologists. They believe in accelerating technological progress to solve problems. Otherwise, society will increase in entropy and fall apart. You have many different, you have communist accelerationists that believe in a Hegelian dialectic, or a Marxist dialectic, maybe better said, that we have to accelerate capitalism so that via a historical process, communism will triumph. There's a lot that has been said about accelerationism, but this is a unique brand of accelerationism, and it seems that occultic types, Satanist types have gravitated towards. There's very different names of these groups and different memes and different forums and things, but they're effectively satanic accelerationists. What is common between them is they are racist. At the same time, though, they're sexually degenerate. So they express white supremacist ideology, love of Hitler, love of white supremacist mass killers, racial politics, racialism, hatred of non-white people. At the same time, though, you'll have, for example, in this case, the shooter was writing about his hatred of non-whites, but it's transgender. And so what crops up in a lot of these different stories is Hitlerism, esoteric Hitlerism, pagan occultism, Nordicist occultism, racialism, eugenics, occult symbology. But you also have, at the same time, there's left-wing sympathy. Some of them are Muslims. Some of them are transgender. Some of them are degenerates in other ways. You find that a lot too. They worship mass killers, school shooters, terrorists, people like Anders Breivik, the Columbine killers, Dylan Roof, Elliot Rodger, the incels, among others. And I suppose the basic belief is that they are trying to instigate division. They are trying to instigate political conflict, racial conflict, division. They lean into political extremism, religious extremism, racial extremism. They carry out targeted acts of violence under the guise, under the aegis, pretending to be right-wing, left-wing, one thing or another. And the purpose is to set off the powder keg. The purpose of that is to create a flashpoint for social conflict. And so what does that mean? Underlying all of it, there is no clear right or left ideology. There is no even clear religion. They're not necessarily Muslims or even esoteric Hitlerists or something. What they're about is chaos. It's about unleashing chaos. And if there is any kind of idea system or value system, it is Satanism. They traffic in grooming underage children, posting nudes, sexual trafficking, pedophilia, hurting animals, committing acts of terrorism. And to the extent that they go out and commit acts of violence, it acts as human sacrifice in part, but also in part a sort of exploiting political sensitivities to create a flashpoint for a wider conflict. This is some of the thinking that's going on. And like I said, this is happening on Telegram. There are acolytes of this kind of thinking, this subculture in Russia, in Europe, in Turkey, in the United States. It's very unknown, but there's some famous examples of it that I'm sure you've seen, and two that stick out in my mind. What this bears the closest resemblance to is a school shooting that took place in Antioch, Tennessee, and a school shooting that took place in Madison, Wisconsin. And those shootings were in December 2024 at the Abundant Life Church in Wisconsin. The perpetrator was Jennifer Rupnow, a 15-year-old transgender. You might remember if you see the picture of her or him, you'll recognize it. And the other was the Antioch High School shooting in January 2025 in Tennessee. Perpetrator was black male. His name was Solomon Henderson. And what these three people have in common, and all clustered around the same time, Rupnow in December 24, Solomon in January 25, this person in August 25, what they all have in common is racialism. Even the black one. Far-right, edgy, racialist politics against non-whites. What they all have in common is the meta, ironic, extremely online, edgelord humor, niche internet meme culture. What they all have in common is the occult symbology, use of different sigils and pagan symbols and things like that. They're all teenagers. Rupnow was 15. Solomon, I think, was a teenager also. This person was 23 years old. All targeting high schools. And so what this strikes me as is a combination of socially dislocated, mentally ill, loners, teenagers, adolescents. And it seems like a toxic combination of people where the pump has been primed, so to speak, mentally ill, young adolescents. Transgenderism has a very high coincidence with personality disorders, mental illness. These are outsiders, these are loners, these are people with mental illness, maybe they're on prescription medication. And it seems that they are extremely online, and either they are attracted to or get groomed, or a combination of both, attracted to or groomed by these internet subcultures that, like I said, are transnational, on niche forums that you've never heard of, that are inaccessible. They go on these forums, and this is where a obsession with violence, school shootings, the occult, sadism, sexual degeneracy is cultivated. And eventually these people are pushed over the edge. That's what this looks like to me. That's the information. And these groups go by different names. They're called, I think, 764 and Order of Nine Angles. They go by different names, different groups, cropped up in different ways. Terrorgram. They've cropped up in Atomwaffen division. There was a stabbing in the United Kingdom similar to this. There was a famous video of a young man who was shot by his stepfather. And then it turned out that he was involved in this kind of pedophilic occult circle on the internet. And then these were two other mass shootings that looked like it spawned from the same area. And again, if you've never heard of this, if you're a boomer, a normie, you know, you might not know what I'm talking about, but if you do pay close attention, if you've ever done a deep dive, this has all the characteristics of that. That's what this is. That's very clearly what this is. And talking in particular about the perpetrator, what you find is that there's a manifesto, there's writings that are hundreds of pages long. And nowhere in the manifesto is there a clear ideology presented. This is not the rantings of somebody talking about, like Elliot Rodger, talking about women. It's not somebody talking about, like the Buffalo shooter or like the Christchurch shooting, mass migration or racism in itself. It's not somebody like a left-wing terrorist talking about Ukraine or Trump. What is contained in the pages of the manifesto, if you've read any of it, and I read through a significant portion of it, what's contained in the manifesto is just idolization of mass killers and fantasizing about violence. It doesn't even talk about transgenderism. It doesn't even talk about the person's transgender identity. It's not even biographical. From what I read, didn't even go into detail about the person's own psychological state, pain, or suffering. To the extent that we can glean anything from the writings, what it says is that he was convinced that he had lung cancer from vaping, which is a histrionic, paranoid. This is symptomatic of the delusional mindset. He was convinced that he had lung cancer based on, no diagnosis, attributed it to vaping, and said that he would die no matter what soon. And what accompanied this was a fixation and obsession with school shootings, acts of mass violence, and his ideations and fantasies about carrying one out himself. And in the writings, he goes back and forth. Should he do it? He'd like to do it, but he doesn't want to hurt his family. He'd like to do it, but he doesn't want to give up his life. And it seems that somewhere in the writing, he says, well, I'm going to die from lung cancer anyway, so I have to do this last thing. He also writes a note to his family and apologizes to them and addresses some family matters and things like that. Now, the reason that I talk about what is specific in the writing is to understand exactly what kind of violence this is, because not all murder is created equal. When we conventionally think of a murder, we think about people that get murdered in the pursuance of another crime, like a burglary, like a robbery. We think about a murder in the context of passion of or crime of passion. Heat of the moment, you find your wife sleeping with another man, you kill them both. You get in a drunken dispute with a friend, a neighbor, someone that's been causing you problems, you kill him. Some altercation that escalates. I mean, this is what we think of murder. But then you have mass killings. And even there, not all killings are created equal. I would not even classify this as terrorism. And some people might say, well, why? Because he's a white male? No. Because when you look at the definition of terrorism, terrorism has a political objective. So when a right-wing person carries out an act of terrorism against a mosque, it's a political act with a political agenda to instill fear and terror in the furtherance of a political agenda, a clearly stated, defined in the manifesto of political agenda. When a left-wing person, like the Weather Underground, blows up a building, same thing. When a Muslim, like bin Laden, according to the nominal example, carries out a terror attack, it's in the furtherance of the Palestinian cause or, freeing Saudi Arabia from American occupation, whatever. And then you have this. And I think that when you look at Sandy Hook with Adam Lanza, when you look at this, when you look at these types of killings, that senator in Arizona who got shot, the Aurora, Colorado shooting, these are, and we'll talk about the words we use, but these are crazy people, evil people. They get a gun and they go into a crowd and they just start shooting. I don't classify that, strictly speaking, as terrorism. I would say that is a unique postmodern form, hyper-real form of nihilistic antisocial violence. The violence is against society as a whole. And to the extent that this person is trying to create a war of all against all, you could say it's satanic in nature, it's satanic terrorism. But this looks to me like antisocial violence. Somebody who is sadistic, a sociopath, antisocial, clearly has layers of personality disorders, mental illness, delusions, carrying out an attack against society as a whole. And I think that's a unique category of violence. It's not properly stated as a left-wing terrorism. People say, well, he wrote F Trump on his gun. This had nothing to do with his feelings about Trump. His manifesto is not about Trump. It's not about Republicans. It's not about right and left. His manifesto is about sadism. His manifesto is about violence for its own sake. Glorification of violence, taking pleasure in suffering and sadism, inflicting the interior pain on society. That's clear. It's a psychological, spiritual motivation. That's what this is. And to the extent that we look at the target, some people said it was an attack on Catholics. That's possible. It's where he went to school. It's where his mother worked. Could it be that this is a place that is deeply personal to him? I don't think the significance is lost on him. If this person is demonically possessed, this person had a shooting target in his bedroom with a picture of Jesus at the head. So clearly, and there's upside down crosses on his gun, saw himself as demonically influenced. Clearly, this is someone that, whether consciously or unconsciously, is in the clutches of the devil. Of course, who does the devil hate? The church, Christ. So unconsciously or consciously, however much that factored in, I don't think that you could say it's a political attack on Catholics. If anything, it's a spiritual attack. If anything, it's not, I hate Catholics because Catholics are against trannies. That's where he went to school, that's where his mom was, and the devil placed him there, under the influence of the devil. Where does a sadistic person that glorifies violence and suffering for its own sake, where is he drawn to commit his evil actions? The church, where the sacraments happen, the house of God, of course. It's a spiritual, not a political, not even necessarily a religious motivation. Under the influence of a supernatural force is brought there. And the symptoms are an embrace of leftism. The symptoms are an embrace of political extremism. The symptoms are transgenderism, these disordered behaviors and tendencies that he gave himself over to. And anyway, so that to me is what this looks like. That's what this is. And if you look at these cases, look at the case of Jeffrey or Jennifer Ruppnow in Madison, Wisconsin, Solomon Henderson in Antioch, Tennessee, they look exactly the same. Read the manifesto. It is an obsession and a worship of the Columbine shooters, of Anders Breivik, of Dylan Roof. Violence for its own sake, violence for its own evil purposes. And to me, that's what this is. If anything could be called a spiritual war, that's what this is. And don't get me wrong. When I look at something like leftism, when I look at something like feminism, transgenderism, I see the demonic and the diabolical at work. But this is distilled diabolical. This is distilled malevolence. This is it at its core. Stripping away the ideological pretenses that guide people toward the diabolical under the premise of false compassion, more sentiment than truth, lack of truth and charity. And people are drawn towards things which are evil under a false pretense, which may appear good, but is in reality disordered and evil. This is evil in its pure form. Strip away the cause of transgenderism, anti-Trump, left-wing politics, whatever you want to say. Inside the manifesto is just a worship of violence and suffering. That's what this is. And so I see everybody on Twitter on the conservative side is racing to say, well, it's a transgender killing. This is what happens when you pump kids full of And don't get me wrong. Do I sort of see the argument? Of course. It is obviously true that transgenders and homosexuals too. Huge coincidence of personality disorders and mental illness. And everybody knows this on some level. Depressives, bipolar, antisocial personality disorders, mental illness, schizophrenia, it all goes with the territory. And that's why we always see these meltdowns. That's why we always see when trannies are out and they get misgendered, that's why we see them melting down. Because these are not mentally stable people. These are people that they initiate a process of stopping the natural sexual development. These are people that initiate the process of getting on hormones and surgeries. And on the other side of the hormone treatments, the pills, and the surgeries, they're even more deranged. They're deranged enough to start walking and taking one step after another down that path, embracing something disordered. And then when it turns into the drugs and the surgeries and the sexual proclivities, which they only get more and more debased, then they're fully deranged. Then they're fully Frankenstein's monster. And so don't get me wrong, I see that. And the idea that you take a child and put them on SSRIs, you take a child that may have a mental or personality disorder, and then you give them drugs, then you give in to their delusions, you can understand, of course, what they're saying. But I think that it's important to isolate these issues out. Transgenderism is an expression of mental illness. There are not a ton of people that are becoming transgender because they're just transgender. They're not becoming transgender because it's being popularized. They're becoming transgender because they're mentally ill. And this is one of the things that they glom onto. Just like in other times, they glommed onto other things. Alcoholism, addiction. They go down these other bad pathways. And so the question is concerning the order of it. Does transgenderism go and make people kill children in schools because they just want suffering? No. Evil creates symptoms of mental illness. Evil creates a situation where people give in to these disordered tendencies. And evil, if you keep walking down that path, leads you to ultimately killing people. And it's important to isolate that. Because a lot of people now are saying, oh, well, you know what this means? This means that, there's some prescription that we need about a culture war issue. And you have to question, what is really the motivation behind a lot of this kind of sentiment? Because when I look actually at a mass killer, when I look even at a transgender person, when I look at a lot of these people that are engaging in these types of behaviors, political extremism, and I know that's rich coming from me. I don't consider myself an extremist. But when you see our young people, this is a 23-year-old guy. These other mass shooters were 15, 17. What you see is a lot of kids that are really losing their way. Society's not there for them. Where are the parents here? Where was this guy's parents? How does a person go that insane? I mean, visibly, noticeably, unavoidably, this person's a lunatic. Acquiring an arsenal in their bedroom. Scrawling out these things. Parents don't check on the kid.
I want to chime in here. And this is an issue that I've seen play out in a lot of different scenarios, especially when I've had certain conversations on transgenderism and have spoken about different people that I may know that identify as transgenders, whether or not they've gone through the process. A lot of times their parents have no idea how to treat that child. So where the child may be like, I think Nick Fuentes called it, transgender is an expression of mental illness, where the child's screaming for help, may or may not be. Now, I don't know if all transgenders are going to accept that what they're doing or how their behavior is a expression of mental illness, especially not while they're in it, right? Most people, when they're in the situation, don't realize it. But let's say that they're screaming out for help. The parents don't know how to react. The parents then react and say, hey, this is wrong. Let's say they react that way. Now the child tends to do what most children do, push back even more. So now the parents are looking at it from a standpoint and saying, hey, let me just kind of be a little bit easy on my child. Let me do certain things that are actually condoning the behavior. So where the kid is screaming out for help, there's something wrong. The parents don't know how to respond to it. So therefore they end up maybe pushing a little bit and then getting a bad response to where they become scared and fearful of how the kid may respond if they continue to push. So then they ease up and end up behaving in a way that condones the behavior. Obviously, this is not everybody's case, but this is something that I've definitely seen. So I can understand how a lot of the conservatives and Republicans may be bringing this up and using this as an example to prove that, hey, see that transgenderism, it's getting out of control. It's making our kids crazy. I've called a lot of this stuff out, where I don't understand why a lot of the liberals and Democrats are pushing this stuff. I don't understand why Gavin Newsom is allowing transgender kids or kids that just are confused about themselves and going into school as Johnny, but then having their teacher and the kids call him Jessica, and the teachers are not required to tell the parents. I don't understand this thing. So when Nick just said, where are the parents? Well, good question. Where are the parents? Do the parents want to be liked? Do the parents want to be friends of their kids? Or are just the parents, let's just be honest, are the parents just not sure how to deal with this stuff? So this is where I do get upset at a lot of the liberal pushing policies, like in California, where you remove the parent from this process. And you have a society that is become so extreme and radicalized that we are condoning this behavior. We're celebrating Leah Thomas. We're having Dylan Mulvaney. Didn't Dylan Mulvaney win Woman of the Year or something like that? We're celebrating this behavior that is simply an expression of mental illness. So now when people are going through these things, when kids are confused, now they're leaning into this because we tend to lean into the things that are celebrated, right? That's why Black kids want to become basketball players and NFL players. Those are the things that are celebrated in the community. We tend to lean into the things that are celebrated in our community. So when we start celebrating these things that are simply screams for help or can be screams for help, we end up confusing everybody, and it does cause that chaos. I don't want to talk too much on it. I think you guys understand the point, but just wanted to kind of share my thoughts a bit on it as well. Let's get back to the video.
What's the solution? Let him change his name? Give him prescription pills? What are we doing to all these people? The only way to prevent this kind of violence is we need to get back to a Christian order. Not anti one thing or another, although necessarily it is going to be anti-transgender. But we need to live in a Christian civilization where there's parents that are loving these kids. Where's the parents that love their children, that are paying attention to their children? Where's a society? Forget even about the parents. We live in the age of the nuclear family. In the old days, it wasn't just you in your bedroom and your two working parents that got to look after you. In the old days, you had a multi-generational household. In the old days, you had a true community. People were eating in the same places, going to church in the same places. The neighbors were looking out for everybody. The police, the people were looking out for each other. And the true root cause of all these killings, I'm not going to lay the blame at the feet of left-wing people that support transgenderism. That's just not what it is. Because you have young, disaffected white guys that are going down the 4chan rabbit hole, and they kill people at the behest of some federal agent in Buffalo, in El Paso, and in Christchurch, and a number of other places. What is at the root of all of these antisocial ideologies? These sick internet communities where adults are grooming children to commit these acts of violence. What is at the root of all of it is there's no society. People are slipping through the cracks. And they're slipping through the cracks because society is not tight-knit. There is no society. There's no semblance of people feeling a part of a body, of an organism. People do not feel like they're a part of anything beyond themselves. And that seems to be the biggest common denominator. Not necessarily left or right-wing ideology, not whether they're a white male or some other thing, not whether they're transgender or even on SSRIs. Those all seem to be things that occur as an expression of it, as a symptom of it, things that coincide. At the root of it are people who we all know struggle spiritually or psychologically, and they're completely isolated. In complete isolation is only where a plot like this could be cooked up. Because, and who knows, we don't know the whole story here, but you know that if this person was loved, had friends, if this person had to leave their house every day and be involved with people, if there was less living space for this kind of stuff to fester, somebody would either catch it or this person would have never carried out this act. What you always see is a person who is predisposed to be deranged or to be spiritually vulnerable, who then, left in isolation, it's like anything else, rotting, festering. They're up in the bedroom, on the phone, on the desktop, on Discord, on OnlyFans, on some obscure forum. And maybe they have a tendency. It doesn't start out with idolizing mass killers. It starts out, as this shooter said in his manifesto, with a curiosity, a fixation. And going on the phone, going on the desktop, and cultivating that with a community of like-minded, insane people from all around the world. Going onto the internet, a place that will give you more of what you want. Somebody that is feeling clearly a lot of pain and dislocation is only getting more and more resentful, more and more monomaniacal in their fixation with these kinds of hyper-real things, the meta-irony, the internet culture, fantasies of violence. And eventually, in a country of 350 million people, statistically, one of these people will boil over and they won't be stopped. One of these people have the wherewithal or the IQ or the luck for their plans to succeed in carrying something like this out. That's just the math. And so, you know, there is no solution for this. There's no gun control solution. There's no culture war solution. There's no easy prescription for this other than that the society that we have is clearly rotted at its core. And strictly speaking, there is no core of our society. Everybody is, you almost think about it as people are sort of like in orbit around the center. And the center of public life used to be the church, used to be the king, the nation, it used to be something. And everybody was held in position in relation to one another around the center. And now there is no center. And now there are no relations between one and everybody else. And so now what you see is people are flying off in every other direction. It's like a nuclear fusion reaction. Everybody's flying off in every other direction and is creating this schizophrenic society. A totally schizophrenic, cacophonous society where people are really in their own world. It seems like everybody is on some level of delusion, whether it's the diet and the health stuff, whether it's the political stuff, whether it's religious fanaticism, religious esotericism, internet stuff, weird sexual stuff. Everybody's flying off in every other direction. And, you know, look, we live on this side of heaven. So this is the world. This is the world as it is. This is the world as it's always been. The world has always been a fallen world and made of people that are fallen of the flesh. So you're always going to have these inclinations, these tendencies towards evil. But what has been lost is anything that is binding anybody, drawing anybody to anything that is good. Binding people together and then binding the people as a whole to something that's good, to something that's transcendent. That is what is missing. And it's in this vacuum, this hollow center where I think in this atomic society, everybody's flying off in every other direction. And you get stuff like this. So in a way, I don't think it's productive to do the culture war thing and say, oh, it's fucking trannies. No, and look, it's the same thing when the left says that. Some young white kid goes and shoots up a church of black people and people say it's these fucking white males. It's no different. It's no different. And I think that, you know, and this is something I've been meaning to say for a long time, the spirit of our Christian religion is not judgment, although, of course, we're going to speak the truth about what is right and wrong, and we're going to assert it forcefully, but it's not contempt, it's not disdain, it's not cruelty that we're pretending is, admonition for someone's own good. The heart of our religion is mercy, forgiveness, compassion, charity above all else. And that's something I think that's missing across the board, whether you get the cruelty of the left with their flavor of political correctness and cancel culture and punch Nazis and fuck you. And don't get me wrong, I don't think there's quite an equivalence between right and left. I think the right's a little bit better. But we're starting to even see our own flavor of cruelty on the right wing. The right wing, we have to acknowledge, has its own flavor of cruelty. And some people might say, I'm guilty of that. I think I'm provocative. I think I'm bombastic. I think my language can be heavy-handed. I don't consider myself a cruel person. And I think that on the right, maybe some people are losing the forest for the trees. I don't identify as right-wing. I'm a Christian. I am an American. And if there are teenagers out there, fucking teenagers, guys, pause, fucking, if there are teenagers, high schoolers. Yeah, they watch Destiny. Yeah, they watch Vosh. And there's teenagers that are going in the other direction. Are we in a culture war against our neighbors? Are we in a culture war against high schoolers? Are we in a culture war against people like Dean Withers? We're in a spiritual war against the devil. And we are all united in that same struggle. Even our wayward brothers and sisters, even our wayward, your liberal family members, your transgender family members, yes, the Democrats, yes, even those wayward people, we actually do have an obligation to them to be charitable. We actually do have an obligation to them to be merciful and understanding. And we are all united in the same struggle against the devil that is trying to trip all of us up spiritually. And so when I see something like this is evil at its core, and people are racing to make it a political thing. They're saying like, oh, this is about like Trump. No, it's about the culture war. It's like, is this really, why are we doing this? What do we have in mind when we're doing this? Is this to do rage bait on fucking Twitter? I see, and it's so fucking gross and disgusting. People like Candace Owens, Charlie Kirk, and Matt Walsh, this is their Super Bowl. Each and every one of them had 50 things to say about it before the bodies got cold. 50 hot fucking takes, 50 engagement bait, rage bait takes, each one trying to outdo the other, trying to prove a point, trying to say something about the Dems, the left, the fucking whatever. And I just question, and normally that's not as big of a deal. It's retail politics. You do engage in rhetoric. It's like a form of marketing. We understand that. We could be mature about that. But on a day like today, when evil, true evil, showed its face in the house of God, and you saw something so heinous, the shooter, drew a picture of himself with the devil reflected back in the mirror. And you say, oh, well, that just fits with my narrative about Democrats. Like, what is wrong with you? What are you actually, do you actually care about people? Do you actually care about Americans? Do you actually care about our society and our country? Do you actually care about the body of Christ on earth? Do you actually care about the body of the church? Or are you just really a Republican? I saw some guy say on Twitter, Jake Lloyd, who I used to be friends with, he showed a side-by-side of my tweet and Matt Walsh. And my tweet, my reaction said, this doesn't look ideological. This looks demonic. This looks spiritual. If anything, this is not ideological. This was influenced by the demonic and the diabolical. And Matt Walsh's tweet said, fucking transgender suck, blah. Okay, predictable. And the tweet from Jake Lloyd comparing the tweets said, guess which one is right wing? Is that really the game? Is like, who could be the most right wing? And what does it mean to be the most right wing? Who can outdo the other in hating the left the most? Who has the most contempt? Who has the most disdain? Who could be the most cruel? Who could be the most judgmental? Who could be the most hardcore? You know, and is that really the game? Is like, I'm right wing. I'm going to put out the right wing take for the right wing team. Yes, I have right wing opinions. I'm very right wing. I don't think anyone would accuse me of not being right wing. I have right wing opinions on basically everything. But at my core, I'm not right wing. At my core, I am a man. At my core, I'm a created being. At my core, I am a Christian. And maybe a step above that, I'm an American. And I do actually have compassion. And this might be controversial. I have compassion not just for the victims who are blameless and innocent, who are gunned down for no reason at all. I also have compassion for the shooter, believe it or not. As Christians, that's what we're called to do. I also have compassion for another soul that was lost far earlier. And it doesn't excuse his actions. He'll be judged and pay for them. God assures us of this. Vengeance belongs to God. But I also have compassion for that person too, who at one time was a 12-year-old, who one time was one of the 12-year-olds we deigned to care about, the children who went down the rabbit hole, isolated, alone, dislocated, predisposed, whatever you want to say, started down that path and kept feeding it a child in the snares of the devil, and was led down that path one step after the other by some transnational online element, by some government operative, who knows, maybe by his own sin of curiosity, maybe actually by supernatural forces. And so that was also a soul that was lost, maybe not today, but a long time ago. And so we have to start thinking globally in that way. And by globally, I don't mean globalist. I mean, we have to start thinking in terms of the cosmos and our role in it. What is the center of your universe? What is the center of your microcosm, your macrocosm? What's the center of your life? What is the work that we're doing here? Is it to get Republicans elected? Is it to score points on Twitter? Is it to be the most conservative we can be? Or is it to actually heal our country? Is it to actually heal? And what is the country? The people in it. And the people are broken. The people's spirits are broken. You know, the etymology of that is to tear things apart. I'm borrowing this from Fulton Sheen completely shamelessly. But that's the essence of the diabolic, is to tear things apart, to disintegrate families, countries, societies, nations, souls into different pieces. Our goal is to heal the country. Our goal is to heal people. And we're not going to do that by taking every opportunity with this kind of sacrilege, this complete lack of any kind of, is nothing sacred. Children, 8-year-olds were murdered today in a Catholic church by some demonically influenced maniac. And you got 40 tweets, one after the other. Here, oh boy, here we go. Oh, they were transgender? All right. Man, this is really going to prove a fucking point. And I'm really not trying to virtue signal, but I just question, have you lost the plot? Have you lost perspective entirely? It actually makes me sick, because there's a lot of things that don't make sense in the world right now. There's a lot of things that are just crazy. We can't agree on anything. Things are confusing. Everything's coming apart. But it's like the one thing we could all see is like, yeah, this is genuinely horrifying. Like this is one of those things that shakes you to your core. When you see that drawing, like look at that drawing. He drew himself looking in the mirror and the devil is reflected back. It reminds you, like, we hate evil. It reminds you we hate sadism. We hate those things. And we love love. We love the self-giving love that overflows from the Father to the Son. We love the self-giving, sacrificial love that flows from the sacrifice on the cross, from parents to their children, from friends to one another. Those are things and moments that remind you what it's all really about. And people are talking about fucking Republicans and Democrats. People have genuinely lost it. So we got to get back to what's real. So much of the stuff I'm just so sick of. Like as time goes on, it's sort of an interesting journey because you do a political show and you start out like, I don't agree with all this woke stuff, race, hatred of whites, the gay stuff. You start out with, this strikes me as wrong. You get into politics. It's all political parties. And what you end up with, if your pursuit is the truth about the way the world works, about the nature of reality, you find yourself in a religious battle. Anyone who is reasonably a critical thinker that goes down the rabbit hole of politics lands on religion. And to me, that's what's real. I'm just not interested in all the other stuff. So anyway, so this is just another opportunity to remember we need to be rightly guided. And we got to remember what we're really about. I don't want to be a part of the culture war. I'm out. I'm resigning from the culture war. I don't want to be at war with everybody. I don't want to be and obviously, you know, and it should be said, it deserves to be said that the Democrats, the left, without a doubt, the political left, for as long as where does the political left originate? It originates in the French Revolution. And the French Revolution was a revolution of Illuminists and Masons and these liberal elements against the Catholic monarchies. That's where left and right originates. You had the proponents of the old regime on the right. You had the liberals, the critics of the regime on the left. Like, that's where it comes from. So you're always going to have a preference for the right, which protects the right to life. You're always going to have a preference for the right, which is against transgenderism, which is against feminism, divorce, which is against these things. But increasingly, they're not. You know, increasingly, the right, what does the right even stand for at this point? You know, out of one side of their mouth, they're going to condemn this. Well, they talk about the killings in Gaza. They'll talk about, you know, transgenders and feminists and liberals on one side of their mouth, and onto the other, this whole administration's filled with gay people, openly gay people. This administration is filled with and is a proponent of things that are very socially liberal. So we just need to be very careful that we are not being instrumentalized by the world. Is the Republican Party and the right, is that truly a vessel for Christians? Or are Christians being used in some clash between people about worldly things? That's kind of where I've been for a long time. These categories are becoming useless. If they both represent liberalism, if they both represent modernism, if they both represent things that are demonic. Bryson Gray, I have infinite respect for Bryson Gray, a friend of mine, because he went against Trump after building his whole brand being a MAGA guy, because Trump was not being a social conservative, was not being a Christian. And the second that happened, Bryson said, I'm out. And so it's just important to have like the right orientation on these kinds of things, on these issues. But anyway, so those are my thoughts on the whole mass shooting. These are spiritual inflection points. I don't think it's even debatable that when you see an act of violence like this, whether it's Sandy Hook, we're going to leave that alone. I don't want to get sued for $1 billion, but like, let's just say what we understand Sandy Hook to be, this, if you are, you know, I feel like if you have a spiritual sensitivity, if you're a thoughtful person, you think about matters of morals and faith, if you're sensitive in that way, when you see these events, they touch us. We understand that there's something deeper going on here, if you know what I mean by that. When you see kids murdered at a church by this diabolical entity, it's like it hits you like a ton of bricks. It knocks the wind out of you. It's like something diabolical happened in another realm. Something happened, and maybe that sounds kooky or whatever, but something spiritual happened today. Something evil happened today, and it had to do with the spiritual. It did not have to do with the polemical, the partisan, the ideological, and it's sort of like, I didn't want to say this tonight, but it's like Star Wars. It's like this was the Sith. This was evil itself. It wasn't the political layers built on top of it. This was the religious nucleus of the left, which is the diabolical. This is the spiritual nucleus of transgenderism, the spiritual nucleus of leftism, of these things. So anyway, those are my thoughts on it all together. I don't know how anybody could tune in after something like that and they want to hear about, we looked at his voting records. He voted for Biden. He's one of theirs. You got to be like kind of sociopathic to look at it that way. And by the way, it cuts both ways. If you look at my reaction to the Christchurch massacre, if you look at my reaction to the Buffalo shooting, it was the exact same thing. I've been doing this show for 8 years. I've seen a lot of mass killings. I've seen a lot of these violent stories, and my reaction is always the same. This is atomized, nihilistic, antisocial violence under diabolical influence. Anything other than that, it just falls short of what's really happening here. It's not just the pharmaceuticals, although that's part of it. It's not just the sexual perversity like porn and transgenderism, although that's part of it too. It's not just government transnational influence, although that always seems to play a role. But the essence of it is that it's evil. And anyway, and we need to take a more, I think, comprehensive stand against evil. We need to kind of shine and show people by example who we are as the Christians. We have to focus on being good. And I feel like a lot of conservatives, they don't use this sort of language. They like to play into it because it's like, oh yeah, we're Christian. It's more like a facade than anything. They go through the motions. They use the right words. They're trained how to sound like this. But where's the heart actually? So anyway, but that's that. I do want to move on. What time is it? We're probably just going to move on, take a look at the super chats. I'll cover the Wikipedia thing tomorrow, but I mean, it's just more of the same. More of the same from the Trump administration, more like anti-Semitism. But we're going to move on. We're going to take a look at our super chats. We'll see what you guys have to say about all this. Let me get set up here. And I know a lot of people are not going to like that take because a lot of people are tuning in to hear me rail and say, so his gun said, fuck Trump. That means he's liberal. He's transgender. It's these transgenders committing mass killings. And, by the way, guy was a white male. Guy was another antisocial white male. This is what happens. It cuts both ways. And, we have to be smarter than that. We have to be smarter and deeper and, just better than that sort of thing. I mean, I know that's going to be every other show is just like, it's like a political campaign commercial, but what's really the goal? Do we want to see, if this stuff is going to stop, it's going to require extraordinary kind of spiritual thing. But anyway, let's take a look at our super chats. We'll see what you have to say.
Man, I'm going to wrap up the video here, but I just wanted to finish off by saying this is not who Nick Fuentes was presented to me as. And I don't believe how he was presented to society as. And every time I watch a video of his, I'm reminded of why the powers that be, the politicians, whoever it is, wants us to hate him. Wants us to hate him. Damn, he really hit on some stuff. This is a spiritual war. World War III, what we are currently in and perhaps have been engaged in for a while, is a spiritual war. All right. Y'all have a good one. See y'all on the next one.